And we're live. Poor Mike. Wait! Like, the button already got hit. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas, the latest techniques, project experiences, to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. And there's Jack. I see Jack sitting there.
Hi.
Mike, I'm sorry, dude. I totally hit live right when you were getting up out of your chair.
No, I have no context for the show, so how can I possibly contribute?
This show is about tea. And there's Alex in Japan.
Hello.
Hi, Alex.
I am well.
We are so dry. Are we even awake?
I'll send you some humidity packed up in an envelope, a sealed envelope. You just open it and it's kind of complete sweat bath right there. No, today I am well air conditioned, comfortable, and ready for action. So how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I mean, we're all rolling into this show kind of slowly. I'm tired. But this seems like a natural start to an awesome show about game audio. Well said, everybody. Thank you for joining in.
We need a cricket sound effect.
Oh, I get that. My friend Anthony Campos, I sat beside him for years working on Guitar Hero, and he can do that without moving his mouth. He does a cricket sound. And so whenever I'd say a joke, I would just hear crickets. And for the longest time, I had no idea who in this room of people was doing that so well. Finally, I busted him. Anthony Campos there at Robotoki. So we were going to talk. We had kind of like a loose subject list for the show. We had all kinds of things to talk about, but we got to keep it to only a couple things so we don't bore the masses or move too fast through subjects. Do you guys just want to start with your favorite? One of the topics was the library or sound package that you thought you got the most money out of. You guys want to start there?
Yeah, I guess if we gotta.
What the enthusiasm! The enthusiasm.
Well, so this is pretty cool. So tomorrow, Oddworld New and Tasty comes out, which is the remake of the first Oddworld game. It's coming out on PlayStation, Vita, 4, 3. I doubt 2, but who knows? And so I was fortunate enough to be asked to do some sounds for that. And
oh, awesome!
I did some video editing, and I did the slog and the elam creatures, and I got a lot of use out of the Recordist's Devil Dog library. It's not a very expensive library, and it was just absolutely perfect for the slog, which is like a two-legged dog creature. It's pretty much just a fleshy mouth with like muscly legs, and so this Devil Dog library, it's like the Recordist.com v-devil-dog-hd-pro-sfx is like this weird dog that is like the neighbor of Frank Brie, and like whenever this dog goes to sleep, it just makes the weirdest like sounds ever. Just super weird. I think it's like the dog is deaf or something like that. Yeah. She is special because she is deaf and cannot hear what comes out of her mouth.
Oh, yeah. We have a deaf dog now, and he makes funny noises now that he's deaf. He didn't used to.
But yeah, so this library is only like $50, and I definitely got a lot of money's worth out of it. It's super.
How many
fantastic.
files?
I closed the tab, so I don't know.
Zip size is 740 megs.
60 files, but if I look in base head, let me see here.
Yeah, 60 files.
But like each one, like there's like 7 or 8 different sound effects in one file. So
I wonder because it says here 60 files, 600 or 800 plus is what it says.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variation, and especially for a video game that was very important. Is whatever material I was pulling from for these monsters, like I had to make 50, 75 different sound effects per creature, and so there's like a growl, and then I had to make 10 growls. There's a bark, and I had to make 10 barks. So there has to be a solid foundation of base material with variation, and Frank Brie's Devil Dog definitely had that.
That's cool. Hey, when you're doing sound design, how much if you buy a library like this, people will start to get used to it, start to recognize sounds out of it. Maybe not producers when you're delivering something, but certainly the end user. So how much editing did you do? How much layering did you do to these files? Given that one file might have 7 or 8 sounds encapsulated within it, were they pretty full? Did you just use them straight off, or did you do a lot?
No, every sound was futzed with.
Okay.
I didn't just chop them and then drop them in because they had to be tied to animations as well. So there was a lot of time stretching and layering with my own voice. So I did the Elam and I did the Slog. The Slog being this dog character. The Elam was like a hairless tauntaun is kind of what it looks like. And it's what the character rides on. And it's supposed to be a very sympathetic, it's your buddy sort of character. And so they wanted a very humanist sort of human element to it. So the Elam is just me. It's just my voice and then mangled.
Nice.
And then, so kind of taking the techniques I did with the Elam, I also did that with the Slog, is any more inflection I had to do, I layered that onto the Devil Dog sounds. But the Devil Dog was the foundation, but other stuff was added, and the Devil Dog in itself was like pitched down and stretched a little bit to match, the timing of the animations, and a lot of chopping going on. So like the attack from one Devil Dog sound with like the tail of another Devil Dog sound to get the right character for that sound I wanted, and so on.
Nice. I had to work with Cubase for the first time in a long time this past week, and man, do I want Ableton to have 5.1. That's a real pain in the butt. Do you have to do? I'm not going to talk about the 5.1 mix like I was saying in email, but do you guys ever have to do any 5.1 stuff?
Nope.
No.
I wonder why. It just got me wondering, and since we kind of got a loose cuff thing, and it's I was reminded by what Jack was talking about with layering all these sounds together and doing the time stretching. So I used to be a Cubase user, and then Ableton stole me away, like at Ableton 4. So here I am back at Cubase, and they've got all these new time stretch features, and they're like, just change your cursor to be this, go to the edge, and drag it. And I have an older machine, but I don't have an older machine that causes it to act like it caused. I can do some pretty advanced stuff. I mean, I can run 200-300 sounds in unison without any freezing on this machine. Yet in Cubase, I took a tiny little audio file, changed that cursor, went to the edge, grabbed it, and had to sit with a beach ball for almost 10 minutes, I promise you. That just pissed me off. And so I thought it was a one-time thing. So I tried it again later. I hit Control-Z, because it didn't even move. That was the crappy thing, is I clicked and dragged and sat through the beach ball. Finally, when it got done, I didn't see a change. So you know how it is. You don't see a change, but a change probably got made, and if you hit save, now you've imprinted that change somewhere, and you can't find it later when it's causing a problem. So I just hit Control-Z and sat through the beach ball again. So then I had to rebuild this Drobo with a new drive and everything, and it did all this refreshing, and my machine actually seemed like it's running a little better. So I thought, well, let me try that time stretching again. Oh, man. See, in Ableton, no problem. Grab, drag, nothing gets held up. In Cubase, it totally gets held up. And then that leads me to, why am I in Cubase? Because I was doing a 5.1 mix. And I usually do those in Logic, but I wanted to do this one in Cubase. My God, come on, Ableton. 5.1. Really? What's taking so damn long? Okay, I'm done.
Maybe they're waiting for 6.0 to come out.
Ah, there you go. You beat me to it, Michael. Sharp. That wit, that humor.
So can I meet both of you at the same time?
Use that draw thing and put little comic bubble.
Let's not do the draw thing.
That'll just escalate. And the people listening to that as an audio podcast will be very confused as we start laughing for no apparent reason.
So Michael or Alex, do you have a super good value thing that you like to use? I assume Alex's is going to be some form of EQ or compressor that it is emulating an old.
All right, you asked for it.
Now this is good. This is one you got a good value out of. Like you spent maybe a little money and got a whole bunch of value out of it, or you spent a crap load of money and you just constantly keep going back to it. Just wanted to clarify.
Well, I got 4. And you're right. Here's the first one. Can you see this all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Sonomus Sweetone. It's a tilt EQ. Sorry, it's a tilt library effectua sampling. Okay, it's an EQ.
Hold on, Alex. I think we're just seeing. Is it? We're just seeing the renoise. I don't think we're seeing. Is it the thing at the top there? Oh, okay, with the green numbers. Okay, so the top like fourth of your screen is this long rectangular EQ, right?
Hold on, it's not actually. Screen share is not going to work because there you go. Can you see it now? No. No. Okay, never mind. This is not going to work, I don't think. Looks like screen share.
So it's a vintage-esque EQ, right?
What about this? No, that's not working either. All right, never mind. Screen share.
Did you want to try turning it off and then back on again?
No, actually, hold on. What I can do is do it like this instead. Okay, you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay. This is not an EQ or compressor unit that's emulating something vintage. Have you seen this before?
No.
This is Sample Magic AB. And guys, this is excellent.
Nice.
Do you know what? Can you tell what it is just by looking at it?
Yeah, basically, I see Magic AB.
Yeah, basically
it is you click to load tracks and then you use those to bypass themselves. I don't know, man.
Looks like ozone.
Basically, what it is you've got 9 slots here, and in here you can load up.
What'd you call me?
You can load up some kind of reference track. Any kind of reference track or reference sample can go into there, and basically it'll just play it on loop, and then you can flick between A and B. This A is what's coming out of your DAW, and this B is that sample.
Nice.
Are you getting the point? So basically, if you keep like massive amount of tracks with reference tracks, reference mixes, or reference sounds or samples, and it's getting a bit unwieldy controlling all of these different reference material, you can put it all into this one plugin. One other nice thing is I'll just kind of just load up some kind of sample here. Don't have samples.
So do you use many reference tracks when working, Alex?
Generally 1 or 2. So especially for a kind of sound, when you get to the mixing stage, if the client or the project demands a certain kind of sound, the good thing about this is that you can actually set loop points. So you can set a loop point in the sample that it constantly loops between. Nice. So that you can just quickly flick between the two. Also has like a mini mode like this. So you can just flick between the two to hear your mix and the reference mix.
I love it.
So this is really useful if you generally keep lots of tracks full of reference stuff. It just keeps it all neat and organized in one plugin.
Cool.
And I was going to mention this, but Jack's not going to let me, this vintage compressor called DC8C2, and also this vintage tape emulator called Saturn, and also this tilt EQ. But I'm not going to do those because I don't want to be predictable. Because I'm far more diverse musician than to be only focused on vintage EQs and compressors.
Well, we'll circle back around, then you can do one of those. I promise.
What? Mike, what? One thing I wanted to say. So when I was dealing with this Cubase problem, I was reading about somebody's suggested solution for Cubase 7 and doing some time stretching, and they said hook up some sort of broken MIDI device that has time stretching built into it. It's funny, I'm being a little vague, I apologize, because I can't exactly remember what they said, but I just like that the solution was go buy some broken piece of outboard gear and hook it in, and Cubase will see it, and then you can turn its knob and it'll make it work. And I thought that was such a terrible suggestion. You know, forums are rife with those just wonderful insights, aren't they? Oh, never mind. You guys aren't talking to me.
No, like I've seen that before. Like coming across a problem, and somebody says, "Oh yeah, it's totally easy to fix it. Just download these 4 things that you have to compile a DLL, and then you have to make sure to boot up your computer in this sequence, along with making sure that it's facing Allah. Otherwise, it won't work."
Yeah. It's so true. I love it when I get in the forums. And then there's that one that says, hey, I tried all these things, and I can't get to work. And then somebody will say, did you try these things? And somebody will write, scroll up. That's one of my favorites. Okay, so Mike, sorry.
So you mentioned ozone in passing, and it occurs to me that that's actually a really good value in its current form. What I'm referring to is Ozone 5 by Isotope, which is spelled with a Z, so you can Google it more easily. And this is a suite of mastering plugins, things you put on the stereo bus for your mix as a whole that'll help make your mix brighter or louder, perceived as louder, or all kinds of things that just do all the sparkle and polish on the final mix once you've gotten it to the point where, as far as you're going to get it strictly through mixing. And it's got the standard tools you'd expect: mix EQ, multi-band dynamics, a finalizing limiter, and what I find really handy is it is just bustling with presets. So the preset can apply to all of these plugins, which is a nice facility you don't get if you're just mix and matching individual plugins. Like you can drop in some of the equivalents for these things in Logic with their native plugin set, but you don't have a preset mechanism that says set this preset to this and set this preset to that, and they all kind of cohere. So I don't typically use the presets as a one-step solution, but they're very good starting points. And if you're not really a mastering engineer, which probably applies to many people, they do at least put you in the right ballpark, and you can kind of fumble your way to a mix that sounds pretty good. So Ozone 5, I think, is about $200 if you don't get the Pro Edition. And that's a really good value for what you're spending. The other plugin I think is worth mentioning, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned before in past shows, is Project Sam's Symphonic Essentials. And what this is essentially a stripped-down version of Symphobia 1 that covers the bread and butter orchestral instruments, a couple of percussion things, and a couple of miscellaneous instruments that aren't actually in Symphobia 1, so that compulsive completionists will feel obliged to buy this even if they already have Symphobia 1. But for the uninitiated, Symphobia 1 is the first library in a series that is ensemble orchestral patches. So instead of having violins or violas, you get strings, and you slap down your fingers on the keyboard, and at some crossover point, your thumb stops playing a violin sound and starts playing a viola sound, and analogous sounds for brass and winds. And the purpose of such a library is to give you something that sounds great for quick sketching. You just want to flesh out an idea for a cue. You don't want to have to necessarily apportion voices to different instruments. You're just fumbling around and want a sketch tool, and Symphobia is great for that. And the Symphonic Essentials library gives you kind of the core instrumentation that you'd want out of Symphobia. You get like legato strings and staccato brass, et cetera, and a couple of little extras that I found really handy. So especially for a starting out composer, starting out really isn't an adjective, but for the purposes of this review, it will be. It's a really good tool, and it's only a few $100s. I think it's less than half as expensive as Symphobia 1, and there is an upgrade path. And Project Sam knows everyone's going to get addicted to this library and want to go to the full Symphobia library, so I think they'll let you upgrade for the difference in price or something analogous to that. That's what I've got.
Nice. I guess that leaves me, huh? So let's see here. In keeping with the with Isotope Iris, I use a lot. I would recommend getting Isotope Iris. It's pretty cool because you can put in any kind of source material, and then you can draw these kind of pictures on top of it that say anything within this. Like if you like a drawing tool where you can make your pen's tip bigger or smaller. You can do all that, and then you draw over the waveform, and it only creates sound out of what you drew over. So if you have this massive waveform and you're only drawing through some high-end stuff and then some low-end stuff, and then you attach your keyboard to it and you start doing your thing. And it's got all these drawers, and if you can't see it, obviously, if you listen to the podcast, but they have drawers all off on the sides, like where my hands are, and they pop in and out. So you might not see them. There's 4 of them, and those have effects racks, and those have editing capabilities and all kinds of stuff. So I use Iris almost every time I do some sort of sound design gig. And in keeping with sound design, I also use, I wrote them down, Audio Finder, which I Iced Audio is the website. I swear by them. Audio Finder, $70, and editing capabilities. I mean, Audio Finder can work as a stereo editor too. You just double click on a wave, it pops up, and all of these features here. It's one of the easiest ways I've ever had to create loops out of single shot stuff is through their interface. It's really well done. Twisted Wave is my stereo editor of choice, although when I do mixing and mastering, I usually do that in Ableton rather than in Twisted Wave, but sometimes you have to get out of it and be just in a stereo editor, so I recommend Twisted Wave. And then this one's expensive, but I use it so much. It's back to Isotope for RX. From everything. The first time I used it, I went to the Santa Barbara Bowl, and John Williams was putting on a concert. And who knew all these Star Wars fans would show up and scream really loudly before, after, and during songs. And so my recording of the concert was rife with, woo, Boba Fett. And I had to get rid of all that crap. And RX did it. I couldn't believe it. I actually have a really good recording of a John Williams concert that got rid of all that cheering in the middle of passages. Okay.
I'd like to apologize to our listening and watching audience. Kyle does not like Star Wars. He really wasn't artistically qualified to record that concert, and we do not endorse non-fans being anywhere near the audio content of the Star Wars franchise. Thank you. You may continue.
That is so true. I am the non-Star Wars fan. I'm not alone, though. My friend owns a comic shop. He doesn't like it either, so it's kind of funny all this stuff.
Burned out.
Well, that's because Star Wars comics suck, but that doesn't mean Star Wars.
I'm not getting into that. So, okay, that was fun. That was good. I think that's a good collection of awesome stuff. Hey, Alex, what else you got? I'm sure you got other things you could give us another screenshot of that you could spend more time on, so people, in case they missed it, would be able to pick it up.
Oh, gee, thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome. Good. Jack, I'm going to mute Jack. Hold on, let me do that.
Let me think now. Value for
one
money.
in the chat room.
Well, I'm going to go with a really strange one. I'm going to say, actually, you can unmute Jack because he's going to agree with me with this one. But I'm going to go with Wise. I've been very privileged in the last few weeks to join the Vitae Backroom, which is a company in Kyoto, as the audio director. And for a lot of the work that we're doing, actually Wise's built-in synthesizer is what I've been using the most. So it's got a very primitive synthesizer built into it. It's like two oscillators and a noise generator, some ring modulation, some FM. It's very primitive. However, having all of that accessible inside the middleware, which means that essentially you can set it up so that the programmer can control aspects of what the synthesizer is doing, is brilliant. Of course, when we come to the end of the line and everything's starting to be packaged up, I'll probably regret that because probably the program will come to me and say, this is way too heavy on the CPU, and you need to get some samples happening here. Just because, as you know, I'm a bit of a synth head. Being able to go into the middleware, which is what is interfacing directly with what the programmers are doing, and use it like a synthesizer, that's been just really, really fantastic. Of course, it can't do everything. I mean, it is limited to what a primitive synthesizer can do, and also your creativity and patching abilities. But Wise is not really cheap. I think if the free version is what is it, like 200 samples, Jack?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there are ways around that, but of course, if we're talking value for money, just as a sort of an audio tool and as an audio a creative tool as well, it's the last few weeks that I've been using it. It's just been really, really fantastic. And just at the end of the day, they're feeling that, well, this sounds good if I make this go like that. So you can just assign that to a sync parameter or something, and give it to the program, and then he'll just do that for you, and that's just brilliant. So there you go.
Wise, awesome. Yeah, I
guess I'm kind of preaching to the choir, though. Really, I mean.
Well, we have to do. It's an audio show, so we have to talk about the audio stuff, making us all the choir.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Wise is that's value for money. I think considering the price of a license and what it can actually do, brilliant. Our last week's guest was Lost Chocolate Lab.
Yeah.
He was heavily involved in creating the excellent documentation for Wise too. So you should certainly check out the project adventure, which I think you participated in too, Jack. Is that right?
Yeah, so I helped proofread it, yeah.
It's huge. Like I've been reading it on the train in my commute to Kyoto every week, and it's like I've been reading it for ages, and I'm only halfway through. There's so much in there.
I got to hang out with Lost Chocolate Lab last Wednesday. Pizza and beer.
Nice.
It was awesome to see him. It was great. We've actually never met in person, so it was really nice to get together. And also we had a guy from Somatone there who was the CEO, excuse me, which was awesome to meet him too, which was really nice. Nick is his name. So I was looking through the list of the email we did pre-show, and one of the things was like day-to-day stuff. Do you guys mind if I ask you some day-to-day questions?
Of course. Sure. Of course we don't, Mike.
So, okay.
Better.
I'm going to start with you, Mike.
Oh, great.
All right. So,
speaking up.
And these are purposely going to be vague so that you fill in the spots, okay? So, what time do you usually arrive at the studio to start, like, digging into a project?
I have two modes, which I call wartime and peacetime. And the answer differs between those two modes. Wartime is if I'm on a gig with a deadline and I'm feeling the crunch of necessity. And I tend to be very disciplined under these circumstances. I will get up, unless I was pulling some obscene all-nighter the night before or stayed up super late, usually between 8 and 9, I guess, I'll step in. Peacetime is when I'm more of in a trying to secure the next wartime mode, and it's focusing a lot on networking and promotions and maybe demo creation, tinkering in the studio, and then I allow myself to enjoy some of the advantages of the freelance lifestyle, and I might really start working at 9:30 or 10, or once in a blue moon. I might just say, this is a great after lunch kind of day, and just cruise on into that lunch period and then really kind of roll up the sleeves after that. The only variation I would add is sometimes even in wartime, if I've just submitted music, I just hit a milestone, I've just sent the client a ton of stuff, I might give myself half a day off or a day off right after that to just kind of recover, in which case I might come into the studio not at all.
So what's the first thing you do when you enter the studio that is related to the work you have to get done?
Usually I find some kind of warm-up is really valuable, whether or not I'm actively on a project. And this is just to kind of fertilize the garden, to get the gears churning, pick your visual metaphor. I might call the piano sound and do some sort of strictly musical improvisation, not worrying about timbre at all. It's going to be piano no matter what. Or I might just dig through my sound library. Sometimes I try to reorganize it, and reorganizing it is an excuse to get to know it better. So I might find there's some patch variations that I didn't really realize that I had, or some subfolder of storm drum with some percussive instruments that I never really explored, and I'll just take the occasion to play around with them. And during this process, if I am working on a project, often I start subconsciously segueing into the work for the day. So I'll start out just noodling with timpani sounds, and all of a sudden I may have just laid down the ostinato for a cue I'm actually going to write. So there's often a nice, very organic transition out of that process into the main body of the day's work.
How much of it is a natural creative flow for you when you're writing some new material, and how much is using your musical theory knowledge to get through, to get started, or to get through a tough patch or anything like that?
I find that I bounce back and forth between the improvisational level and the more intellectual, structured level. Sometimes if I'm in a deadline and I'm feeling a little bit of panic because time is short, I might fall back on something that's, call it enlightened methodology. Like I'll take some compositional approach and I'll try to apply it to something that I wrote earlier in the project when I was in a more freewheeling, loose, improvisational mindset. I'll take some sketches that I did, and I'll think, what happens if I take this melody and I turn it into harmonic sequence? Or what does this sound like in retrograde or inversion? Or how can I reharmonize this? I'll start with material that I wrote in a better mindset and then get mechanical with it and see if I can come up with some interesting variations. And there have been a couple of deadlines where I've really saved my own ass just falling back on some technique applied to material that was originally improvised or done in a more associational modality. But I've covered a lot of space that I had to get across at the last minute by being a little bit methodological.
So the question is escaping me right when I was about to ask it. Oh, do you have any tips for people on how to stay focused when you start to wander? Because we work in the creative arts, and I know that my mind will start to wander, and I have to pull myself back. What kind of techniques do you use to stay focused on the work?
Well, there's always good old-fashioned fear. Remind yourself how many minutes of music you have to write in the next few days. That's great to sharpen your focus.
Do you work better under pressure than you do when it's an open end?
There's kind of a sweet spot in between. If I have almost no time and the expectations are high, then it's very difficult for me, and I do have to do what I described, where I may have to fall back on something methodological. But if there's no deadline in sight, then it requires more effort to impose that sense of necessity. Like if I'm just making a demo, like I'd like to have more combat music, I should write a couple of demo pieces. That requires a certain amount of iron discipline just to make sure you meet these deadlines, because nobody but yourself is going to be angry if you fail. So somewhere in between where I've got a deadline but it's not breathing down my back is kind of that nice sweet spot of motivation where I naturally stay focused, but I'm not sweating blood. In terms of other techniques, quit the web browser, quit your email client, maybe even just turn off your internet access and just focus exclusively on your music creation app, or maybe get away from the computer a little bit. Walk around the block, just let the musical instincts take over and just try to hear something in your head. Or sit at a piano but in a different room. These are really good techniques for refocusing and bringing your attention back to the music and away from Facebook.
Good suggestions. So, okay, so you're nearing the end of the project, and inevitably, I'm not saying that you're guilty of this, but certainly in audio this happens a lot. You're starting to get a little late. Actually, let me reword this. You feel that you're going to start to get late on something. Whether you misunderstood something, some kind of instruction they've given you, or you've fallen behind because of technical reasons, a hard drive died. How soon, what is your balance for reaching out when you're running into troubled times?
I've never had to hire a compositional subcontractor or to team up with any composer. I'm digging through my memory to make sure I'm not lying. But yeah, I've worked with orchestrators from time to time, and certainly sound designers, yourself included. But I've never hit that wall, and I think it's because I've never been faced with a deadline that was absolutely heart-stopping. I think the worst deadline I ever had to do was about 45 minutes of music in a month, which is not brutal by film standards. It's kind of scary by game standards, but I managed to press through that just by being kind of conscientious about what my musical resources were, kind of what scales and harmonies I wanted to use, and trying to deploy them in an intelligent way across the score. But I've had every other kind of assistant. I've had the person who went out and got me groceries so I could stay home and write. I've tried to offload anything that didn't have to be done by me to other people. But as of yet, I've never hired another composer unless I've forgotten someone, in which case I encourage them to get angry. But I don't think I have.
Yeah, I wouldn't have imagined you did. My question was more about when do you contact the person that's hired you to say we've run into a hiccup, but it doesn't sound like you've ever needed to do that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That kind of depends on the project, and some projects have deadlines for the sake of having deadlines, but they don't really mean those deadlines specifically. Like they'll come up with a kind of, this happens in games more often, because games have kind of a loosier, goosier time frame than film and certainly TV. But with games, they'll give you a series of milestones across dates, but there isn't always a drop-dead ship date at the end of the last one, or the ship date might end up being 3 months later than was originally intended. So I do try to go by the schedule as often as possible, but there have been a couple occasions where I kind of said, hey, how important is it to you to get those cues on Monday? Would it cause any ruffles if I sent them Friday instead? And usually in those cases, the guy will be like, oh, were we supposed to get something Monday? Yeah, sure, do what you need to do. And on a rare occasion, someone said, no, we want to get those assets locked down, and then I just didn't sleep or whatever I had to do.
Gotcha. Well, that was awesome. Thank you. I'm going to move now to Jack with the same questions, although I can't remember exactly what the questions are, so I'll paraphrase. So, Jack, you there?
Yeah.
You're not muted or anything. So, I think the first question is, what's the first thing that you do when you enter your studio to work on a project?
I turn the computer on.
So you do keep it off. That's actually very interesting because I leave mine on and kind of like ready for recording at all times. So I was curious that actually you hit on something I was curious about.
Yeah, no, I turn it off. I care about the environment.
You obviously don't live in California. So, so that's it. That's your number one thing. You got anything to add to that? Don't make me pull teeth. Keep going.
Well, I mean, I check emails because as a freelancer, you never know which email is the one that says, hey, something's on fire, we need it in 12 minutes. So you check that. And
how many projects do you kind of have at any one time? Do you try to shoot for a few, a bunch, none, just one?
I mean, I shoot for as many as possible, but it's, as a freelancer, it's so hard to say because you never want to have like two projects in full blast at the same time. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you might have like 7 things going on in different states of you're done, but you might have to do some stuff in a few weeks to tighten it up. You're talking to like these 4 developers who might have something soon. You have a standing relationship with one client who, whenever they need something, they contact. So, like, it's right now I'm working on like 3 projects, but there's probably like half a dozen more that could pop up at any point.
And now, how do you see? Because we share a similar kind of profession. I try to keep mine to 2. I find I can keep a good balance mentally and creatively by having 2. Any more than 2, and I start to overlap, or I start to create the same sound for 2 different people and forget what they want, But what I find though is it's feast or famine. I'll have 1, and then none for a while, and then another 1, and then 12 will show up. And they all need it tomorrow. So how do you keep, when that situation happens? How do you manage determining which ones can be at what timeline? Because they all say they need it yesterday, but the truth is, like Mike was alluding to, they don't necessarily need it when they think they need it. So how do you manage that communication with a client?
I don't.
All right, on to Alex. Jack is quickly, hey Jack, you should use the show as a promotion. I'm terrible. I don't manage.
No, well, I mean, like, I've never really had to deal with that. I've never had to deal with the only situations that I've ever had to deal with, like, hey, we all need this stuff by next week. I'm like, well, I can't do it. Here's this guy I know. He's really cool, and then I give it to him. Yeah. And then I move on. I suppose I should subcontract, but there are still times where you're working on stuff and like you don't even have time to subcontract. It's like just the funneling things through yourself can be taxing, and so I worry in those situations. Like, well, do I want to just be the middleman for this, or do I want to spend time being a middleman, or do I want to work on sound?
How do you keep yourself focused then when you're working on something?
It's just a high level of panic and complete, utter desperation. If I don't have any projects, I have negative amounts of motivation. Um,
we owe you motivation to get you out of bed.
yes, but if I'm working on projects that especially have deadlines, then it's then I need to get that work done, or else I will throw up all over everything. But the nice middle ground is something like Nova 111, which doesn't have a definite deadline. It's just like I know these guys are working on it, and they want me to work on it too. So just hanging out, watching TV or something, and then I'll get out the laptop and start working on a tune, and then that tune becomes part of the soundtrack or something. But even that one, like we showed it off to some people at GDC, so a certain amount of it had to be done by then, and so I just did it. And I had nothing else going on at the time, so it was okay.
Gotcha. So, okay. So I'm trying to think of the questions that I asked Mike. I was more focused then. I know one question I want to ask is, you're doing and I run into this a lot. So you're doing 3 projects, okay? And they all have footsteps, and they're all wearing boots, and they all have, because games are often about adventurers, so they're carrying, adventurer equipment, or it's a military guy and he's carrying, a backpack and a gun and a gun belt. But you've got 3 different projects. I know you don't make them all sound the same. So what are some of the techniques you use to differentiate this boot-wearing walking adventurer from this boot-wearing walking adventurer from this boot-wearing military guy in the other game?
Well, so since say one of them is like a PC game, the other 2 are console are mobile games. So maybe for the mobile games that are paying me a lot less, I might fall back on one set of library sounds for one and then a different set of library sounds for the other. And then for the PC game, I would record those myself. And then maybe for the 2 mobile games, I might layer in some of the stuff I recorded. But obviously, the bigger project, you're going to want to have more variations. So, boom, that's the one that you need to go out and spend the time recording. Also, since it's not a mobile game, hopefully they're going to be paying you more than 12 cents per asset. So you can spend more time on it. But the mobile games that are like, hey, we're not actually going to pay you, it's all profit share, or hey, we're going to pay you a fifth of what you normally get. There's like, okay, well, you're going to get some library foods. Like I just finished working on a game where I had 2 footstep sounds because that's all I could afford.
Oh, wow.
But I recorded those. And if I would, that was more of like a dirty grass sound. And if I was to work on another game tomorrow that needed dirty grass footsteps, I would probably go out and record those myself because I have dirt and grass outside and a Zoom H4n right here, so it'd be pretty easy. But as far as just working on multiple, your question being multiple projects, kind of using the same sorts of sounds, how do you not make them all be the same sound? Is we'll just don't have them be the same sound. Even if you were to use the same base material on all 3, you can sound design's layering, and so you just use different layers.
Yeah, cool. So, at what point do you let a client know that that you've run into some issues? Is that something you just push through and get to the end and kind of hope it goes away, which is human nature, frankly? And certainly in my younger career, I used to do things like that when I was a programmer. It's like, I'll get it fixed by the deadline, I promise, and then it doesn't, and it just looks terrible. Or do you inform them right away, which is also can be bad because I have a fear that if I bring up every issue that I'm going through, obviously I'm going to be considered high maintenance or throwing out warnings all the time where there is none. So where do you find that balance?
Well, since I haven't really had the fortune and or misfortune of overbooking myself, I've never actually hit like a deadline like that. I've never been like, oh shit, I need 70 more sound effects by tomorrow morning. I've never reached that point. Usually the overpowering sense of dread and terror that overcomes me for the project motivates me to front end the work so that I don't get to the back end and I'm out of time. Usually it's I've gotten to the point where I have extra time, or not saying like weeks, but like, hey, I can turn it in on Thursday instead of Friday or something. But
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
No, there was a weird pause, and I thought that I just wanted to make sure we didn't fill it with dead air, which happens when I tell a joke. So, the question I was going to ask was, when you're doing test material to get a gig, how much original material do you record for that test, and how much do you just use your sample libraries?
Well, it depends on the project, and it depends on when they need it. If the client's short-sighted and they want it in 2 days, well, that's going to be a lot more the library material.
Yeah.
But if they're like, get it to us in 2.5 weeks, it's like, okay, that gives me time to go out and record stuff. So I mean, it comes down to that. It also comes down to what I have. If the game is about punching lions, well, I don't have any lions laying around, so that material is going to come from a library. But yeah, usually time is the factor there. Is whether or not I have 2 days or 200 days. And unfortunately, most proposals or audio tests have a huge like a bananasly quick turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
Even the ones that like they'll give you a week. It's like, well, they'll give you a week, yeah, but they want you to score these two-minute videos plus these 3 30-second videos or something, which people might be able to do pretty quickly, but I fucking can't. So I'm going to use some library sounds.
Oh man, dang it, man! You crack me up, and then I lose my questions. Oh well, never mind. I'm moving on to Alex. Alex.
Hello, I'm still here.
So
I'm just sort of just shopping for some vintage EQs and compressors while Jack is blabbering on about workflow.
When you find some good ones, you should probably send them to Jack. We should set up like a Google like search that just has Jack's email as the recipient for like any kind of news or new compressors that come out.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think
I use the best vintage compressor, and I use it way too much, so I don't need more. I need less. I need more transparent compressors. I don't need more opaque compressors.
Are you referring to Vintage Warmer?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that is a very. I'd have to. I have to concede that Jack's choice in saturator compressor is very fine. That's PSP's Vintage Warmer. Very good. It's a classic.
I never use that. I should probably get that. Huh?
No, you'll steal my sound.
I go outboard though. I will. I'll steal down from a vintage compressor. Okay, so Alex, and you and I have kids, so I know what your day starts like. But besides that, when you're finally sitting down, and especially now that you're doing this audio director gig, what is step one? You walk in the door. What do you do?
Well, yeah. So I guess my situation is a bit more similar to yours, Carl, in that we both have children. We both have studios at home, and so work. The ability to concentrate on work is a rare and precious commodity that you don't take advantage of. I mean, if you've got some quiet time, if your wife has taken your children out somewhere, then that's your deadline, so to speak. You got to make the most of that quiet, peaceful time to concentrate on what you're doing. As far as working in the office at Vitae goes. Because I'm only there 3 days a week, the first thing I do when I go in is I chat to the programmers and the game designers and the artists, just chat to everyone, just kind of wander around like some kind of lost puppy, just standing next to people's desks and saying, so what's going on? What have you been working on? How's it going? And I often find that that's really useful. I mean, I'm sure it's really annoying for the people that I work with, but it's really useful to sort of keep on top of what everybody's doing. In a sense, it's sort of become you do get a sort of a big picture view of what's happening, like visually, and of course as far as the game mechanic is concerned and the programming, you get a big kind of overarching view of everything. And I guess when you're working on audio, that's really, really useful to sort of have a good idea of what's happening visually with the game and what's happening as far as the game mechanics are concerned. And the experience for the player, of course, is all shaped by those things. and it's all excellent reference material for when I finally sit down at my desk and say, okay, now I have like a whole lot of interesting things in my head that have been given to me from the people that I'm working with, and they're nice sources of inspiration.
Good. So you socialize and talk about the project, which is extremely important. So now back to your I guess, well, I don't know what to say there. So I'm trying to figure out the way to ask the question, because you're doing two things, and I imagine they have two different answers. But and keeping in mind we only have 10 minutes left, maybe push it another 5 after that. But what do you do when you start to feel like the deadline might slip? How soon do you talk to the client or to your bosses?
Well, in my case, because I don't do freelance work, because I'm very fortunate to be doing the audio for 2 companies, more or less part-time on both of them. We have milestones and we have objectives to meet. And I guess in my case, because I like to have those conversations to keep with everybody, if I'm finding that the work that I've got on the table is too much for when the next milestone or things like that, then I guess I'm a bit what's the word? I don't know, a bit paranoid perhaps, and I tend to kind of voice concerns like that immediately. If I'm sort of feeling that, well, this is a little bit ambitious for the amount of time that we have left, and if it's something that I can take care of myself on my side, like scaling back the scale of what it is that I'm trying to do in my head, scaling that back myself, then obviously there's no need to talk to people about it. However, if the requirements for the project are so large and the time is looking constrictive, I guess whether it's good or bad, I'm not sure, but I like to sort of voice it early, just so that people are aware of where I am as well. And I guess that's kind of important when you're only in the office 3 days a week. You miss out on other stuff that's happening on the 2 days that you're not there. For example, today, right now, the game's going on without me over there in Kyoto, right? And when I turn up tomorrow morning, if I have issues with the schedule or with the deadlines, then it's pretty important that I let them know early, because I'm only there half the time compared to them. I guess that sort of answers the question, perhaps.
It does. And so now I'm going to open this up to all 3, and I'm sorry I didn't get to all 4 questions on you. I just want to get to these last 3 that I'd written down as a group. So how do you guys get access to things that you wouldn't ordinarily have access to? Like, for instance, in Mike's case, perhaps, and this, I know this has happened to me oftentimes when I'm working on a composition project, is I don't have enough material to really start to write deep music to. They give me some ideas and I'll start writing some stuff, and then you turn that in, and it always seems to be not quite what they're looking for, because you're waiting on them to get you something more substantial. So how do you, in all 3 cases, how do you guys kind of, what techniques can you tell people to use that will kind of get the gears rolling in that regard, and have people start returning to you material that you can actually write against?
Wow, that's an excellent question.
That's a constant struggle. It's some of it you do yourself. Like, I've worked on projects where it's like, hey, I need some screenshots or videos, especially for timings and stuff, like videos for the animations. And it comes like, sometimes you'll ask that, and then the artist will then start tallying up how much time it's going to be taking them to do that, and they don't want to. So what I've done is, like, if it's a computer game or a PC game, you can like screen cap the animations yourself. If it's an iOS game, you can get this app called Reflector, which I got recently for a project.
Yeah, I use that.
Which pops your iPad or iPhone screen onto your computer, and so you can then screen cap your desktop like it was normally, and then that's how you can get material for timing animations and stuff. And so some of that you can do yourself. Other times you just got to keep badgering and saying, like, hey, like, I can't do stuff until I know what I'm making it for. And if you can't get any feedback on that, then there's nothing you can really do with that client.
Yeah, Mike, what do you got?
Well, I've been pretty lucky in working with game companies that have given me a steady stream of art assets when I've asked for them. Gameplay videos sometimes involve a little more work, so sometimes I roll my own. I'll literally point like my camera in video mode at my laptop screen or at another iOS device and just make a home movie of myself playing. I don't really need to see a legitimate gameplay experience. Just stumbling around the world is sometimes enough to give me the basic vibe. Uh, if you're working for a bigger company, there may be an argument for creating a relationship with someone who's a little closer to the source of art assets. Maybe find someone in the art department. Maybe you'll have a point of contact person who'll probably be a producer or creative director or somebody. And the first time you get art assets, they'll probably be a CC to someone in the art department. Maybe the next time around, you just write to that person directly, and that will cut a level of bureaucracy out of the flow, and you won't be bothering your point of contact with, hey, can you have them send me some concept art for the fire level, stuff like that. You can just get it straight from the source.
And that's very important, I'd like to interject, because every time I've done that, the person who is the point of contact has been happy that I relieved them of that constant duty of keeping track of things. So I know some people are afraid of that. Like, I don't want to go directly to the guy. My point of contact is right here, and the point of contact hasn't given me permission to go directly to the guy. Just do it anyway. I'm telling you, take the bull by the horns and do it anyway. In the end, the point of contact is happy that you took the initiative.
I mean, be sensitive to the corporate culture and try to perceive how much of a sense of proper channels there are, and whether it seems cool or not, and what kind of relationship you have.
Oh, you're so proper, Mike.
You might tread lightly if it's a big company that you haven't worked with before, but in most cases, I agree with Kyle. You're probably sparing your point of contact a lot of a headache and a lot of emails, and you'll get stuff more frequently than you would have otherwise.
True. True. Alex, what do you got on this?
It's a really, really tough question. I'm really, really privileged to. The two companies that I'm involved with, one being this one, and the other one. Yeah, the other one being Vitae in Kyoto. I'm really privileged to actually be there. So I'm half of Winning Blimp, so it's easy, and I am the art department, so that's fine. But as far as Vitae is concerned, I started. It was 3 days a week, and I started like 2 days on site and then 1 day here at home. And very quickly, I realized that it's manageable, but it's just not ideal. And if I have the opportunity to be there on the site with everybody, then sourcing reference material is a matter of standing up, turning around, and looking on other people's screens, really. It's all right there. And I think, so anyway, that's only the privileges that I'm very lucky to have. But if you don't have those privileges, I think I would have to agree with Mike's advice. I think that's a really, really top tip if you're in that position. Finding the person who has the assets, and then finding the most frictionless, most compatible way to sort of milk that person of everything that they've got. As Mike said, whilst being very sensitive of the culture in the company, and if you've been there one or times, or you meet once a month or once a week or whatever, feeling out, are these guys, they're pretty casual, is it, nobody really cares who's emailing who about what, or are they more structured and they like protocol and there's a process for everything? Being sensitive to that. And then once you've got that knowledge, so that being an important first step, once you've got that knowledge, using it to find the most efficient, streamlined way to get to the source of the person who has what you need, the art assets or the game design concepts, or and many, I don't know, you probably have to correct me here with your experience, but many larger companies may also have some kind of intranet or something that you could get access to that has resources that people might put up there as well. So that could be something worth investigating. Yeah.
I usually find that I'm the one who's more structured and into the protocol than the studios that I work with. Especially later in the lifetime of the project, as things start to get wildly, out of control, and everybody starts putting on multiple hats and trying to just get answers. And that has its own problems, though, because I might need something from an animator, and the animator is now working on some other thing. It's not even on his schedule because it has to be done in the next 2 days. So one thing I wanted to ask about was in the 0 minutes we have left, By the way, when I ask you guys a question, I go like this. I'm not going, oh my God, they're going to answer my question. It's so boring, these crazy people. I'm looking at the clock. I just wanted to clear that up. I asked Mike a question and I went like this. And I caught myself and I was like, no, I'm looking at the clock, but Mike thinks I'm an asshole.
I'm not thinking of you at all.
So, well, I'll ask this, and yeah, this is actually a good question for the last question because it's hard to answer, and so it's going to force you guys to try to be streamlined. So, you're in between projects. You've been sitting in your studio for a very long time, and I know my wife's an accountant, and the last thing she wants to do is do our checkbook when she comes home. The last thing I want to do when I'm done with a project is sit in my studio. But how do you kick your butt in gear, go to your studio, keep making sounds, keep making music, even though you don't have a project, because you know you're going to call back to that material in a future project? How do you keep that going?
Play an instrument. Definitely play an instrument. Like pick up, if whatever it is you do, if you play piano, play piano. If you play bass, guitar, drums, whatever, just go and play for a little bit, because it's music after all. And I guess we get caught up, if you like, yeah. I mean, I guess we get caught up in the idea that we are producers and we are mixers and we are sound designers, but at the end of the day, we're musicians, and musicians make music, and making music with your hands, with your mouth, with your body. There's no better way to refresh yourself.
Good suggestion. Mike, what do you got?
When I'm in peacetime, as I've described it, I do a lot of listening. I try to listen to what's current, but also I focus on a few things that I just like. It might be from the 1960s, might be a film score from the Golden Era. I might just decide to listen my way through the entire Star Wars soundtrack.
Why would you do that?
This or whatever else, but I just reconnect myself to the music world at large. Sometimes listen to some stuff that's stylistically completely unrelated to what I've been doing. Like it's time to explore the Beastie Boys' greatest hits. And I'll do that for a week. Whatever. Always be a consumer of music. And when we're in a project, sometimes we get in this very focused mode where we only listen to our own stuff. And that's fine for short periods, but it's good to return to being a human being after a while and just reconnect with your own aesthetics. So that's one thing I find very handy.
That's a great suggestion, and I concur and condone doing the same thing. Unfortunately, sometimes usually the music that I listen to when I'm doing the mixture of what you guys are saying, I'm listening to some of my favorite music, and then also I'm playing the instrument. My instrument is typically guitar, which isn't always welcome as a compositional instrument in games. And then the music I'm listening to is, like lately I've been into Loverboy. Oh, that's so funny, I know. Loverboy is a great band out of Canada, and I scoffed at them when I was younger, and now I'm like, hey, this is actually some, working for the weekend that's quite a thing. So I find out that I don't necessarily listen to music that I would use as a compositional kind of source. But what's funny, and Gerard was saying this when he was on the show, is that you go back to those themes. Even though I'm listening to Loverboy right now, and Leon Redbone, to be fair, I listen to probably more Leon Redbone than Loverboy. Look him up; he's amazing. I do find myself when I'm composing something like pulling off a working for the weekend kind of thing at like half speed or something, halftime. So they do creep up, and I think they're very useful. But with that, I'm going to Jack. Jack, what do you do for off-project inspiration?
Nothing. Nothing.
I knew he was going to say that. Nothing, or sleep, or drink beer.
No.
I live in North Carolina.
Nothing useful. No, whenever I don't have much going on, I usually spend a lot of time doing game stuff, but not audio stuff. So I'll mess around in Unity, or I'll mess around in Construct 2 and work on my own little game ideas and learn a little bit of C# script or JavaScript. That's
Oh wow!
And then I usually feel bad about it because I'm not spending time on sound design, and then I'll get a big old sad. But yeah, so I'll usually do that. Or recently I've been learning how to do coloring, like color theory for comic books and stuff.
Cool.
So nothing useful really. And it doesn't help me get jobs, but music
is color. Music is color. Still very useful.
Yeah, I guess.
But we do. It sounds like Mike is the one who's the most structured about the peacetime, getting gigs, contacting people. Certainly, I know I could do better at that. But that's a whole other episode. With that awesome exit. By the way, next week remind me not to exit on Jack, guys, so we can leave on an up note.
Like video excerpt where he goes from the story about a dead dog to something cheerful and freaks out about it.
Oh my God! Yes. So okay. So then I'm going to say goodbye. So that was. So we covered a couple of good topics there. What's your what are you getting the most value out for your what sound library? What compositional tool are you getting the most value out of for your money, which is a great topic. And the other one was what's your day-to-day? And yeah, that was really fun for me to listen to. I'm going to go back and listen to the show so I can hear what everybody was saying, because I had to think of future questions while I was hearing the answer to the question I asked, which is the worst part of hosting this show, is I don't get to participate in some ways. But with that, I'm going to say, hey, chatties, thanks for coming. Thanks, guys, for being here. As always, I love seeing your face. And that's it. I'm hanging up now.